Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Nick Kroll Show. So today we got something different going on here. We're going to be recording a series, and this series is going to be about financial freedom. We're going to break this up into three parts because I have my friend Joshua Osgood here who used to work for Citizens Bank. He has a lot of knowledge in this industry. He started his own financial page on Facebook, and he's been kind of consulting with people one-on-one. And we are best friends. We've been friends for a long time, so we feed off each other. And if we don't break this up into three parts, we're just going to be jumping all around. It's going to be very hard to follow. So this one, what you can expect to hear from us is like what the series is going to contain, why you should even care about this stuff, and why it's important. The next one, we're going to talk more about debt and how to get out of debt. And then the third one, we're going to talk about what to do next after you're out of debt, buying a house, investing, all that stuff. So, without further ado, Joshua, how are you today?
I'm doing all right, Nick. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, me
too.
So,
where do you start when you talk about financial freedom? Where do you even start? Because so many people just don't even have a clue about their finances.
Yeah, I think the start of the journey is a little different for everybody. I think phase one of any journey to financial freedom is realizing that there's a problem. And I think for me and for most people, at some point in our lives, we go into debt of some kind, because unfortunately, that's what we're taught. Growing up, we don't learn how to create generational wealth. We learn how to buy consumer goods, go into debt. We learn about credit scores, but we don't learn about how to be financially free. So I think, personally for me, it was making all the mistakes that, in my journey I needed to make to realize that I was going down the wrong path. So for me, it was realizing that I had a problem, and if I kept on this path of buying things that I couldn't afford with cash, eventually I was going to have a negative net worth of $500,000 to $600,000 before I knew it.
And I mean, that negative net worth is probably the most common thing you would ever know in the United States. 80% of Americans are in debt or live paycheck to paycheck. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, at the end of the week, you shouldn't have to be worried about your lights going off or putting food on the table for your family. And I know there's going to be people that are like, well, no, we don't. We just need to get paid again. Well, what happens if you don't get paid again?
Right.
What happens if you lose your job? What happens? There's just so many things, and that all creates stress. And for me, the not having debt is just such a weight off your shoulders. I mean, I've said this before, but think about this feeling when you're at work or you're anywhere that you just don't want to be, and you go, I don't have to be here anymore. You don't own me. I don't need your money. I'm here because it's fun.
Right.
I'm here because I'm trying to collect a paycheck and build my wealth, but I don't have to be here, and you can walk away. I mean, that mindset is just so freeing, and you're happier at the end of the day.
I think what that plays into is that, debt and finances, as I've said many times before, really is a behavior problem. And I tell people all the time, when I wake up in the morning and I go to work, it truly is a choice. I can be there or I can be somewhere else. I don't need a high income. I think a lot of times people, make excuses for going into debt. I don't make enough money, but, debt really isn't an income problem.
It's absolutely a behavioral problem, and it comes down to discipline, really.
And what's funny is, the average debt per household, for household income, is relatively the same. It's around 26 to 30,000, regardless if your household income is, below 50 grand or above 100 grand. So regardless of your income level, I think when people make more money, they just buy a bigger house. They buy a more expensive car. They're trying to keep up with the Joneses, and that's a huge mistake that people are going to make. So, and that kind of locks them into that job. Like, I can't, make this lateral move, or I can't, go for something I really enjoy doing because I need this salary. I need to be here. And, when you buy those kinds of things, when you set these high standards for yourself, you're gonna constantly be swimming upstream, and it's gonna be exhausting, and eventually you're gonna burn yourself out. But where you don't want to end up is to be 55, 60 years old, have refinanced your house 3 separate times, and still have 15 years left on your mortgage.
It's so common. I see that all the time, and it's so sad. Like, I mean, you should be able to own your house within 15 years at the minimum. You know what I mean? I mean, at the maximum. You know what I mean? Like, there's and I know I'm saying you should, but you can. Like, people are probably listening, and they're like, "What do you? You don't know what you're talking." Like, I'm telling you, this is not like rocket science. You know what I mean? Everybody comes from different backgrounds. Everybody comes from different situations. I get that, but I've heard on Dave Ramsey's show a single mom call in making $30K a year with 2 kids that had, I think it was like $40,000 or $50,000 in debt, and she did it. She made it work. Like, don't sit here and tell me that you can't do this, because I've had people freak out and tell me, you don't know what you're saying, you can't, what if this, what if that. There's always a what if, but you can either play the what ifs or you can just start working on it.
I think what people have a tendency to do is they tend to create barriers in their mind that they can't get over. And the idea is to eliminate those barriers. And, honestly, if you're struggling financially, there's 2 things that you can do to quickly get out of that. You have to be real with yourself about where your money is going. Do you go out to eat too often? Are you drinking Starbucks every morning? I understand, $3, $4, $5 in the morning makes me happy, but can you afford it? You shouldn't have to make those decisions. And I think you have to flick a switch in your mind that goes to a saving mentality, over a spending mentality, and that kind of goes back to the barriers. Take those barriers down, and allow yourself to make some progress regardless of income level.
I think that plays a lot into just starting with making a budget. I mean, I forget the percentage. Maybe you remember, but there's like the percent of people that don't even have a budget in this country is mind blowing.
Very high.
I mean, it's mind blowing.
Very
like,
high.
If you don't have a budget, I mean, you don't know. You just see a number in your bank account and you go, "Yeah, I can buy this." You probably can't though.
Right.
Like what do you do for your budget? How do you make a budget? Like if someone came in and said, "Hey, man, I need help making a budget," what would you tell them?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that kind of go for everybody. And I think step number 1 is to get out a either an Excel spreadsheet if that works for you, or just I think what works best for everybody is to transfer it from your mind, with a pen and write it down.
You need to see it. You need to see the actual numbers and the amount of money that you're spending on gas, groceries. I mean, you'd be mind blown at the subscriptions of Netflix, Amazon, Spotify, Hulu, all this bullshit that you're paying for.
Yeah.
What it actually adds up to. Like, oh, it's $10 and maybe T-Mobile pays for my Netflix. Like, yeah, but you're losing so much money on all these subscription things.
Right. I think it's the hardest part is to really open up your bank account and really see where your money's going. And I know for me, I was in denial for, quite a while. It was, well, I worked really hard. I deserve this jet ski. I worked really hard. I deserve this snowmobile. It's just $100.
Who told you don't deserve shit?
Yeah, you might have done that a couple times. But fortunately, I guess that's big on it too, is being honest with yourself, and also to just say, I'm wrong. I'm not right in this. One day I'll have this again. And I'm well on that path now where, I could have a snowmobile, I could have a jet ski, I could have a side-by-side. But, in my opinion, if I can't pay cash, I can't afford it. But, going back to the budget side, write down your base income. And I know there's a lot of people out there that get paid some kind of commission structure, and that's fine. But what I say for people like that is, what do you expect to make at least? I think people who have some kind of commission structure in their jobs have a really good idea of what they're going to make at least. And that is kind of your baseline expense. Try to allow yourself to live within that baseline income and figure out your budget with that. It's actually a little bit more exciting that way, because that is kind of how I get paid. And if you can figure out how to live on the minimum, the rest of it, goes into savings or goes into things that, you're working hard for.
Right, but I think it's so important to have a budget for that as well. Like, I know when my wife and I do our budget, she can make a lot of overtime if she wants to. So we have her base, like the bare minimum that she can make, and then anything after that we have a plan for. So like half of it goes to our house and the other half goes and divvies up to the other things that we want to do or whatever. But that overtime, we don't even count that as part of our income. When it hits, great, and we use that for the mortgage, and then split it up between whatever else we decide. But you have to plan for that money as well. Because if you just make a commission check and all of a sudden it's bigger, you're going to be like, oh, I got an extra $1,200. Let me go blow this. And that's what happens.
Right. I think that blends into the theory of budgeting to zero. And, I give every one of my dollars a home every single month. The base, but also all of the extras. So regardless of how much it is, it has a home. Right now, personally, I'm working towards paying for Courtney's graduate school. So that's where that's all going for me right now. That's the phase in my life that I'm at. That's my goal. But everybody's goal is unique. But have a plan for your money at least. You have a mortgage. Obviously, that's a good goal. We want to get rid of that. That's where yours is going. Mine is going to higher education. I don't have a house yet, so it's not going for that. I'm also not saving for a house yet because I have some impending expenses coming up. Grad school. So, I'm at a different phase. I'm a great saver. I have a great budget. I know where my money's going every single month, but, we're at two different stages, you and I, but the things that are similar is that we have a budget, we know exactly where our money is going, and we know what it's all for, regardless of how much we make.
So you've paid a significant amount of student loans off already. I mean, I never had student loans, thankfully. My wife did a little bit, but we took care of that pretty quickly because I had always, since I was 15, a goal of mine was to own a house. And I had been saving and saving and saving. And when we got married, we had debt with her student loans, and we just wrote a check for it because we were saving for a house, and that was one of the hardest decisions we've ever had to make. And I usually don't share that publicly, but I just want people to understand that you have to make those sacrifices along the way. And I'm not talking a few $1,000s. It was $40,000 that we just wrote a check for,
right?
And that was, I'm not kidding when I say, one of the hardest things we've ever had to decide, but it was so worth it because now we didn't have that $400 a month payment whacking us every time. And we don't have to budget for that. And we saved up so much more than that over the next years, and we were able to put a down payment on our house, and now we have no debt besides our house.
Right. I think you have to ask yourself, what are you willing to temporarily give up, to live better later? And the decision that you made to pay off those student loans, that was only a few years ago. You would have still had 17 years left on those, or whatever it would have been.
At least, yeah.
Mine were 25, and I had a few, but yeah, you had to sacrifice. What other things?
You know what that sacrifice was? It was living in a place that we fucking hated.
Yeah.
And we stayed there for an extra probably year than we originally wanted to, so we could do that. For one fucking year. That's what people don't get, is they're like, oh, I don't want to make any sacrifices. We sacrificed another fucking year for the rest of our lives. We don't have any debt for the rest of our lives. And it was so worth it. Did it hurt at the moment? Yes. But that's the thing with instant gratification. It's gonna hurt in the moment. Or instant gratification is when you do something because it feels good in that moment, but later it sucks. And we did the opposite of that. We looked at the long run, and I can't even explain to you how worth it was.
It really pays dividends. And, when it comes to making those sacrifices and delaying that gratification, something that you need to swallow, you, me, anybody trying to go down this path, is that, keeping up appearances is not important. You're not addicted to stuff. You like stuff. I like stuff. But I'm not addicted to it. At some point, I'll have a time where I can get it, but I'm going to pay cash for it. And I think that's a big part of it. And you also you have hope. You got to have hope from the beginning. You got to believe in yourself that you can do it. When your friends ask you if you want to go out to eat, you sometimes have to tell them, no, it's not in your budget. You know where your money's going. It's not in your budget. And people have looked at me like I'm crazy. And I might be, and I probably am. But, it's a big step. And paying off student loans, for me, it sucks because, as you know, it's not going to anything necessarily.
Right. You don't get to touch, feel, or have it. You get a piece of paper that most of the time we have a big disagreement on this. We're not going to go into it, but it's just not even worth it most of the time. Most people blow so much money on college, and it was fucking useless. Some people, it works really well in their favor, but I'd say probably more than 50% of the time, it's just a waste. And when you could see that money and you could buy something with it, that feels good. But you got to pay these loans off because you owe them. And people are like, oh, well, maybe the government will bail me. No, fuck that. You took out the loan. Right. You're responsible for the loan.
Yeah, listen, waiting for the government to bail you out is not a financial plan, okay? That's not a strategy. Going to, become a teacher, hoping that it's going to pay a decent salary, knowing that there's federal programs to get you out of debt, not a strategy. Working, at a VA hospital to get out of student loans, but you have to wait 15 years or whatever the years are for these different programs, not a strategy. Over 93% of the time, they pay nothing. You get told no. Not a strategy. That debt's going to continue to accrue interest at a severe pace, and you're going to be behind. And the problem with it, too, is that because people can't touch and feel student loans and education, they don't make paying it off a priority. They would rather pay off, their Mercedes or their BMW, and they just continue to defer these things because there's no penalty. And honestly, a lot of times, when they go to get more debt, they don't even see the student loans as a problem. They don't even look at them as a big issue, even if they've been in deferment. Oh, well, there's no payment. The bank is going to give you more money for something stupid. So, obviously, I think I think we're more aligned on education than you think. I think that college has become a cultural norm, which is the problem. I think that the federal government has gotten way too involved in guaranteeing loans to 18-year-olds, that have no idea what they want to do in life. And here's $75,000, a year for the next 4 years to go to Brown University because you got an A in Algebra 2. You have to be real here. And that's why, colleges are charging this exorbitant price for education. There's just it's insane. And for me, it was a problem. I was fortunate enough to get out of school in under 3 years, about 2.5, with my bachelor's. I saved myself over $100,000 doing that.
Right, but I remember that, and you worked your ass off for that, and you earned your right to talk about that, and you earned that money saved because it's not easy. And I mean, so many people go to college, and it's a fucking party for 4 years.
Yep.
I mean, God, what a waste. I mean, just what a waste.
Yeah, tremendous waste of the opportunity because, honestly, colleges and universities do have great networks. And I think any professional person, you included, I mean, if you put yourself in the right circles, you can really get places. And, if I leverage my college network a little more, I could probably get places. But also, who knows when those networks are going to come in handy again. So, for me, it allowed me time to mature. It allowed me time, to honestly gain a lot of confidence because I was pretty uninspired in high school. I was pretty unsuccessful. I was nothing but average. And college gave me that time, but it's not worth $200,000. You can learn that anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps some people. I got a friend, he has a business because he went to college.
Yeah.
He said, hey, make a business model, and he did, and he was like, fuck, I'm going to put this into play.
Right.
And he did, and it's successful, and I mean, that's great, but it's not for everybody. But I want to get back to like making a budget and how to really like go into that and really dive a little bit deeper into that because we broadly touched on it, but like I mean, so what my wife and I do, I'm a pencil and paper guy. Josh is more of a tech guy. He likes his little tablet stuff, but we go through our bank statement and we just search for gas for the last 3 months, December, November, and whatever comes before November, October.
And you must use only a debit card for most of your expenses too.
Yeah.
So you can keep track of all your expenses pretty easily.
Yes,
so
exactly. We don't have 17 different credit cards that we're swiping shit on. We have 2 different cards, and we go through, we write down all the gas charges between her and I, because when you're married, it's together.
Yep.
If you're single, just do all of yours.
Yep.
And we add that up for the 3 months. And then we average it, but then we add, depending on what it was, we add, I don't know, probably 10 to 20%, just in case you go a little further, you drive a little more, whatever.
Yep.
And then you do that for all the different things you blow money on, food, groceries, even like budget yourself for going out to eat as well.
Correct.
Like that's something that you got to, I guess you don't have to do it, but that's something a lot of people like to do.
If it makes you happy and you have to enjoy the process too. You can't cut it down to zero. You have to allow yourself to enjoy your life to some extent.
Right, but be realistic with it, right? Like you don't need $600 every month to go out to eat. No. You need maybe 100, and it depends on what you can afford too, right? Like sometimes, I mean, Dave Ramsey says when you're paying off debt, the only time you should be inside of a restaurant
is if you're working at one.
Exactly. And I mean, I love that quote, but at the same time, like, let's get realistic because you're going to get burnt out. Like, I mean, I love Dave Ramsey's principles. I love everything he stands for,
too.
But I just think that like you have to allow yourself to take a breath sometimes.
Yep.
And that is a good way to do it. $100 a month out of your budget. Go out to eat, enjoy your life.
If you can afford it.
Yeah.
If you simply can't afford it right away, you can't have it. If you are living at or near the poverty line at this moment in time, you just have to be realistic with the budget. But it's very important if there's something that you like, cut the fat in other places, but also allow yourself to do some things that you enjoy because we probably enjoy a lot of things, and you're probably already doing all of them. You just need to cut some of those out and then allow yourself to do what's most important to you.
Yeah. So, from there, we go from I just pulled up what we did for last month. Since we moved, we had to redo everything because we have different bills now than where we were staying. So we got car, gas, groceries, pets, oil, car insurance, phone, electric, Comcast, T-Mobile, house oil, and all this other stuff that you have to pay for. I mean, that's actually pretty much it because we don't have any debts. So then we add all those up, and our monthly bills come to X amount of dollars. Then we have a mortgage to pay as well. Our goal is to pay that off way faster. So we make sure that we put X amount extra onto it. So now we total all that together and we come up with our number. Then we add our incomes together and we go, okay, let's say our income is $8,000 a month and our debts are $4,000 a month. You now have $4,000 left over. So what do you do with that money? What we do, what works for us, is we each take X amount of dollars to ourselves for, quote, fun money. And that's like, I mean, for me, that's guns, go out to eat, whatever you want to do with that. I use X amount of money for RN Fitness, X amount of money for this podcast, and X amount of money for my investments. Then there's still money left over. And whatever that is goes right onto the mortgage as well because we want to pay this thing off together as fast as we can. And my wife's quote fun money, she does something very similar. You know, we're saving for another car, so she puts some towards that and some towards the mortgage. And I mean, it's pretty simple. Like, it doesn't take long. I mean, if you've never done it, it might take long, and you're not going to get it on the first try. Right. There's trial and error with this, just like everything. But, you know, what do you guys do?
I mean, I'm not married, but I am engaged, and our finances have been together for, I would say, a little over a year now. But we've been working together for about 6 years. So, you know, we look at, you know, our base income. In mine, I have a base. We know what she's going to make. So, you know, we look at that big lump sum, X amount of money this month. You know, I figure out my baseline expenses, rent, power, utility, and groceries and gasoline, which is pretty consistent. So those things are really consistent, and they're the majority of my budget. You know, rent, you know, between those things, that is like the most of my money. After that, you know, gas might go up or down a little bit. Power might go up or down a little bit. But something that I do that works for me is I use big numbers. So I don't get it down to the penny. You know, if let's just say, you know, car insurance is $59, you know, $75. Honestly, I'm using $75, which sounds crazy to think, but what that creates is it creates almost an artificial buffer. Like, that little bit of money kind of adds up if I do that on all of my bills. So, you know, if that's what I do with all of them. So I kind of round up to the nearest 25, use big numbers so I can do quick math. Because quick math is really important, especially when you're out and you're not keeping track of every single expense, which I would probably recommend doing if you're just starting. You know, use an app or a spreadsheet if you're disciplined enough. But there's many you know, apps out there. I'm not going to plug any one of them, but they all work and they all do the same thing. So, I mean, it's pretty simple, man. We just take our income down, you know, list our expenses, give ourselves some fun money, and we're just, you know, we're at the point in our budget where we're so conscious about it, just like you are. Like, we write it down just to visualize it when income changes or things like that or expenses change, but it's ingrained in me now. Like,
yeah, I mean, I go to the gas pump and I pretty much know what it's going to come to at this point. Like, you know, for each car we have, we pretty much know where we're going to be at. But it's still good to every month to sit down and write it out. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you I do that every single month. Okay, yeah, I'd be lying to you if I did.
Right.
But every 2-3 months we get back, we see where we're at. And, you know, it's like what Josh was saying about rounding up. I think that's a really good point because at the end of the month, you'd rather have too much money in your bills account than not enough.
Correct.
You know, you don't have enough. You're kind of fucked there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that's what works for me. It creates a buffer. It makes sure that there's enough money in my account. I mean, I had a situation, you know, last month. I don't remember exactly why, but I had a few more expenses than I planned. And, you know, my account got down to being almost overdrawn. Not because I didn't have enough money in that account, but it's that situation where, you know, if you round up, you make sure there's a buffer, you know, because your checking account shouldn't have $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 in there. You know, if you're fortunate enough to have that in your checking account or your savings account, that's fantastic. But, you know, you can't log into your bank app every day and see all your money sitting in your checking account because a checking account is your spending money. That's what's going to bills, and you might have a bills account and a fund money account, and a lot of people do that. For me, I don't have that personally. I have a couple of checking accounts, and a couple of savings accounts, and I'm not going to go into the purpose of each of them, but you know, I have one checking account where, you know, rent is paid, car insurance is paid, car payment is paid, gasoline, groceries, like my expenses.
Yeah.
And then I have other accounts that are for savings for other things. Like I'm saving up to buy a car for Courtney. I have a fleece that's going back in August. Biggest mistake of my life. Leased a car. Not that I can't, quote, afford it, but I can't pay for it in cash, so I can't afford it.
You never get anything from it either. You don't turn it in. It doesn't have value, and at the end of 3 years, it's just gone.
Yeah, 39 months, and I'm going to pay $15,033 for this car. So a little over $5,000 a year to drive somebody else's car. Fantastic. Good move.
Think, I'll go into a little bit more detail of what we do for our accounts and stuff. Like, we'll have a bills account. We'll each have a fun money account. We'll have a savings account. And then we'll have, like a business account, for this or RN, whatever it is. And that's it. I mean, it's simple. Like, you don't even need to have 1,000 accounts. You just need to be conscious of your money. You just need to make sure that you're keeping track, you're adding, and when you spend a little bit more, because there's gonna be like a big purchase that needs to happen, right? Like, and we're gonna get into this later in the series about having an emergency fund and all that stuff built up. So if something happens, you can cover it without having to take out a loan or anything like that. But the thing with this is none of it's really hard. It's just discipline, and it's sticking with it, and it's sitting down with your spouse, fiance, whoever it is, or by yourself, and just saying, hey, what do I have? What do I do? What do I have left over? And how do I get, if you have debt, how do I get out of debt? And I think that's where we'll pick up on the next episode, is how to get out of debt and go into those talks. So you got anything to kind of wrap this one up?
I think the last portion of a budget that I want to put in that I think you touched on a little bit is investing. I didn't mention my investing and what I do. I think we'll go into it a little bit more coming up, how you would invest, why you would invest, how much you would invest, if you have debt, if you don't have debt, the different strategies. But for me, I do have a budget for how much I am investing in 4 different vehicles of investing. And I think there will be a time to talk about all 4, why I do them. But I do budget X amount of dollars per month. And I call that paying myself first. So when I get paid every week, before it even hits my checking account, I have paid myself first. I have paid my future self, and I will be thanking myself when I am older for that. So that's something that I wanted to touch on, and I think it's going to be important in everybody's budget, when they get out of debt, to make sure they're investing early and investing often.
Yep, and we will go into some pretty big detail. I'm assuming in episode 3 about that. We really we're just kind of talking here, so we'll see how everything plays out. I mean, we sort of took some cliff notes, but I think episode 3 or part 3 of this series is when we'll really get into the investing part. But coming up on part 2, we're gonna talk more about getting out of debt, staying out of debt, and got to read my notes here. I forget what the other part of that was.
And kind of what to do after.
Yeah, and then where you go from there, because you don't have debt anymore. So what do you do with your money?
And hopefully that's most of your life. I mean, hopefully most of your life you're out of debt. Hopefully, if you're listening and you're young, you listen to the first episode and you follow on to the second one. Most people spend most of their lives in debt. We're trying to have you spend most of your lives creating generational wealth. So,
absolutely. So hey, everybody, thanks so much for tuning into this part 1 of this. I don't know, 3, maybe 4-part series. We'll see where it goes.
Could keep going, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Josh, thank you.
Cheers.
See you guys.